The marble in the lobby was cold, but Ava Jordan's smile was warm. It always was. She wore it like armor. Not too bright, not too sharp. Just enough to reassure anxious clients, hush arrogant executives, and deflect questions like, "How long have you been working here? Are you the temp? Can I speak to someone in charge?" It was never really a question. It was code. You're not who we expect. Ava had learned to swallow that early. Being the only black woman at the front desk of Lexwell Holdings, a billion-dollar tech finance company built on old names and new money, came with a script. Be polite, be professional, be invisible, but make it elegant. At 8:01 a.m., she was already on her second cup of coffee and fifth good morning when the elevator chimed and the glass doors parted. He walked in like he owned the air. Richard Vale. Tall, silver hair, charcoal suit, a watch that probably cost more than Ava's yearly salary. Technically, he didn't run the company, he funded it. A founding investor, a power behind the curtain. And from the way people stood up straighter when he walked by, he liked being the kind of man who didn't have to explain himself. "Good morning, Mr. Vale," Ava said smoothly. He didn't answer, just stopped, looked at her. His eyes lingered too long. Ava felt it, that shift. Not curiosity, not respect, something slower, slimier. He said, "They really upgraded the lobby. Didn't realize it came with a new centerpiece." A few cuckles from nearby suits. Ava didn't laugh, didn't flinch. She just replied, "Yes, the marble is imported. From Italy." His smile widened, but not kindly. "So are you new?" "4 years," Ava said. "But I still know how to hold the door for guests." It was subtle, measured. He liked that, she could tell. Predators always do, when they think you're playing. But she wasn't. Not yet. He leaned in, resting his hand on the edge of her desk. "Well, I look forward to seeing more of you, Ava." She didn't tell him her name. She never did. After he disappeared down the hallway, Ava exhaled slowly. Her palms tingled. Not from fear, but from the tight restraint it took not to call him out right there, in front of everyone. She glanced at the cameras. They never caught tone, never caught weight. Just frames and pixels and plausible deniability. Her coworker Marcus leaned over from the mailroom. "You good?" She nodded. "Yeah." But the smile was slipping. Not all the way. Just enough to know something had changed. She had survived worse. But this felt like a test. And something inside her, something tired of swallowing, smoothing, nodding, whispered, "Maybe this time, you don't let it slide."
The next time it happened, Ava didn't flinch. Because she was watching, not just listening, not just smiling and nodding like a good gatekeeper. She was studying. Richard Vale came by again 3 days later. Same suit, different tie. His tone was lighter, almost joking, but the look in his eyes was the same, calculating, testing, trying to measure just how much she was willing to ignore for the sake of keeping her seat at the desk. Don't they get cold dressing you this close to the door? Is that lip color part of the uniform? It's distracting. You ever think of being more than a receptionist? You've got the charisma. Ava logged every comment. Not in a notebook. Not in her phone. In memory. Body memory. The kind that tightens your spine and makes your jaw tense halfway through a sentence. The kind every woman learns, especially black women in white spaces. She watched the way the assistants glanced at her, then away. The way the HR director, Lauren something, always took the long way around the lobby when Richard came in. They know. That was the most dangerous part. Not the words themselves. They were calculated just right to escape accountability, but the silence that followed them. At lunch, Ava sat in the break room with Marcus, the mailroom guy who'd been at Lexwell almost as long as she did. "Hey," he said, leaning over his sandwich, "you remember Katrina? The temp, from February?" He nodded. "She quit. Out of nowhere." "Why?" Marcus hesitated, then mouthed the word veil. Ava froze. Marcus shrugged. She wouldn't say it out loud, but after he called her into that consulting room, she was gone in 2 days. No goodbye. Ava sat back. It wasn't just her. It never was. That night she went home and didn't turn on the TV. She sat at her kitchen table, lit only by the fridge light spilling from the open door. Her dinner was untouched. Her phone buzzed. A notification. LinkedIn. She opened it. "Congratulations on your 4th year at Lexwell." She stared at the screen. 4 years of making coffee, directing meetings, smoothing over awkward handshakes, taking messages, pretending not to hear what she heard. 4 years of not being seen, until a billionaire decided she was something worth looking at, in the wrong way. She closed the app. And for the first time since taking that job, Ava Jordan started writing something other than messages and memos. She started writing everything. Dates, comments, patterns, names. A timeline of silence, written in her own hand. Not to report. Not yet. But to remember. Because if there's one thing power fears more than exposure, it's a record.
The strange thing about being watched is how quickly you begin to watch back. Ava arrived at the lobby 15 minutes early every morning that week, not because she had anything to prove, but because silence had taught her one rule. You don't survive by waiting. You survive by noticing first. She kept her eyes on the cameras, on the elevators, on the ones who whispered when she passed, and the ones who avoided eye contact altogether. It wasn't paranoia, it was pattern recognition. And this week, the pattern changed. Richard Vail didn't say anything on Monday, just smiled. That was worse. He lingered longer than usual by the desk, hands clasped behind his back like he was inspecting a sculpture. She could feel his presence like a heat lamp, deliberate, patient. A few execs walked by. They looked down, or pretended not to see. And then he said it too, so soft for anyone else to hear. "I hope you're writing everything down. Would be a shame if the truth got misunderstood." Ava didn't answer. She didn't blink. She just looked him square in the eye and said, "There's more than one camera in this building." His smile faded for a half-second. Then came the chuckle. The one men like him used when they weren't sure if they were still in control. Cameras are just glass. Power decides what they remember. By Wednesday, she noticed someone new. A man in a gray suit, no ID badge, sitting in the far corner of the lobby with a laptop that never seemed to turn on. He wasn't on any official staff list. She checked. On Thursday, he was back. Different tie, same posture. On Friday, she asked Marcus casually if he'd noticed the guy. "The wallflower in finance gray?" "Yeah, definitely not facilities." "Then who?" Marcus shrugged. "Security, maybe, or someone Vail hired." Ava didn't respond, but she saw it now. Surveillance wasn't just digital. It had a face, and a seat, and eyes that never blinked. That night, she backed up her notes. Not just to the cloud, to a flash drive, and another, and another. She hid one in her coat lining, one in a book cover at home, one in the vent under her desk, because now she understood. This wasn't about a comment anymore. This was about power sensing rebellion. And power, it always watches closest before it cracks.
Friday. The kind of cold Manhattan morning that stung the skin and bit into the bones. Ava Jordan stood at the front desk of Lexwell Holdings like she always did, poised, polished, unreadable. She had trained her face into neutral grace. But inside, she wasn't calm. She was waiting. Richard Vale had been circling her space all week, circling without touching, watching without speaking, like a storm waiting to pick its moment. The unspoken pressure weighed more than words. It was psychological warfare dressed in a smile. But today he dropped the mask. It was 9:14 a.m. Ava was placing a call sheet on the reception tray when she heard his voice just behind her shoulder, too close. "Didn't anyone teach you it's rude to ignore a man twice?" She turned slowly, keeping her hands calm. "Mr. Vale, if you have business—" "I am the business." He stepped closer, inches now. Her desk, once her buffer, now felt like a trap. The cameras were angled outward. There'd be no proof of what came next. His hand brushed her arm. That was the line. No more gray areas, no more subtext. This was contact. Ava's voice didn't rise, it sharpened. "Remove your hand." He smirked. "Relax, you're a pretty face, Ava, but faces don't last forever. You should be smarter about—" She cut him off. "Security is on their way." "What?" She raised her wrist and showed him the button beneath her desk, the silent one. She had pressed it the moment he stepped too close. "You crossed a line. You're bluffing." But he was wrong, and he knew it the moment the elevator chimed. 2 security officers stepped into the lobby, not running, not shouting, calm, trained. They moved toward her, not him, but made eye contact with her first. "Miss Jordan, is there a problem?" She didn't look at Vale, she looked at the guards. "Yes, he touched me, without my consent." Silence dropped like a curtain. Richard Vale opened his mouth, but no words came. "Escort him out," Ava said. It wasn't a request. It was the first time she spoke with command. And the lobby, the entire high-rise shell of money and mirrors, felt different. It listened. The officers hesitated only a second. Then, to the shock of every onlooker, they followed her words. Richard Vale, billionaire, untouchable board member, was led away. He didn't fight, didn't argue, but his eyes locked on hers. Not with fear, with calculation. "You'll regret this," he muttered as they walked him out. "I already did. Every day I stayed silent." Later, alone in the bathroom, Ava splashed cold water on her face. She looked in the mirror, but didn't just see herself. She saw every woman who'd stood here before her, who didn't speak, who did, who were fired, who disappeared. She wasn't special, but she was done. And outside that door, the company's PR machine was already spinning. But Ava? She had her own story. And this time, she would be the one to tell it. On Monday, the building hummed with silence. Not the peaceful kind, the thin, brittle kind. The kind you get after a fight that no one talks about, where everyone pretends nothing happened, but watches you like you started a fire in a glass house. Ava felt it the moment she stepped through the revolving doors of Lexwell Holdings. The stares didn't linger. That would be too obvious. Instead, they slid over her like wind, brief, cold and fast enough to deny. She walked to her desk. No one said good morning. Even Marcus, her friend from the mailroom, gave her a tight nod and disappeared into the back. The phone still rang, the lobby music still played, the marble still gleamed. But the temperature had changed. At 10:42 a.m., an email arrived. Subject: Reminder of conduct policies and mutual respect. It wasn't addressed to her directly, it went to the entire staff, but the subtext screamed her name. Lexwell Holdings prides itself on fostering a safe, inclusive environment. All employees are reminded to conduct themselves with professionalism and discretion at all times. We are all part of the same team. Discretion. The word choked her. It wasn't a show of support. It was a warning. Don't make trouble. Don't talk. Don't push. Ava read it twice, then forwarded it to her personal email and printed a hard copy. She filed it next to her growing stack of notes, time-stamped and dated. They thought she didn't know how this worked. They were wrong. By lunchtime, the whispers had reached the executive floors. She overheard two assistants near the espresso bar. I heard she pushed him, literally pushed. No way, he's on the board. She'd be gone already. She had something on him, has to. Maybe she's exaggerating. Or maybe she finally snapped. The words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they were expected. A black woman raising her voice must be angry, must be unstable, must be a problem. Ava didn't interrupt them. She didn't have to. She just walked by, slow enough for both of them to shut up and stare into their coffee cups. She was done trying to make people comfortable. She wasn't the one who'd crossed a line. She was the one who drew it. At 3:17 p.m., a man from legal approached her desk. Sleek, expensive, a handshake smile with cold eyes. Ms. Jordan, do you have a moment? If it's about scheduling, sure. Actually, it's about last Friday. We'd like to invite you for a conversation. Informal, just to clarify your experience. She blinked once. Will there be a transcript? He smiled. It's just a check-in. Then I'll be recording it, for clarity. The smile tightened. Of course. That's your right. As he walked away, Ava felt the buzz in her spine again. Not fear, readiness. They weren't trying to resolve anything. They were trying to contain her. But Ava had passed the point of needing permission to speak. They could whisper. They could warn. But they couldn't undo what had already begun.
The conversation was held in Conference Room 7A, the one with the frosted glass walls and a view of the river, sleek, modern, intentionally non-threatening. But Ava knew better. Every inch of the room screamed curated diplomacy. The succulent on the table, the 2 bottles of still water, the blank legal pads placed just far enough apart to feel casual. It was a stage, and she was expected to perform. Waiting for her were Lauren Kemp, head of HR, and Thomas Clay, the corporate attorney who had approached her at her desk. Both were white. Both wore the kind of practiced expressions that passed for concern in buildings like this. Ava, we just want to ensure you feel supported. Really, because it feels more like you're managing exposure. A pause. Then the smiles returned, slightly dimmer. This isn't adversarial, Thomas added. We're here to clarify facts. Great. I brought my own copy. She slid her printed timeline across the table. Dates, times, comments, a structured account. No emotion, just data. They didn't expect that. Lauren shifted in her seat. You understand, of course, that these matters are delicate? So is my safety. Thomas leaned forward slightly. There's been concern about how public this could become and whether that would be helpful for anyone. You mean the company? We mean everyone involved. Ava almost laughed. Have you spoken to the other women? Lauren blinked. Other? The ones who left, quietly. The ones who didn't file anything because they knew exactly how this conversation would go. No answer. Instead, Thomas reached into a folder. We'd like to offer you this, he said, sliding a packet across the table. Ava didn't touch it. Let me guess. Non-disclosure agreement? A mutual non-disparagement agreement with compensation and a recommendation letter. You wouldn't have to stay. There it was, the exit plan. Clean, polished, payout attached. Ava leaned back in her chair and looked at both of them. You've spent millions designing this building, branding your values on glass and stone. But underneath it all, it's still just paper walls, pretty lies holding up power. Thomas frowned. Lauren looked down. Ava stood. I'm not signing anything, and I'm not leaving. Ava, please understand. I understand perfectly. I'm not the one who needs clarity. She walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned. You want silence? You'll have to earn it, and you won't. Then she left the polished room and its paper walls behind. Back at her desk, she found an envelope. No return address, no name, just her name, handwritten. Inside was a note on thick white cardstock. You think this ends with you? Be careful. Some things aren't yours to break. No signature, but Ava didn't need one. She recognized the fear behind it. It wasn't hers. It was theirs. The message came through LinkedIn. Private, unassuming, no subject line. I was you once. I stayed quiet. I still hear him in my sleep. There was no name attached, just a burner profile with the initials NS. No photo, no work history, just one line in the bio. X. Lexwell. Ava stared at the screen for 10 full minutes. The cursor blinked, waiting for her to reply. She didn't yet. Instead, she copied the message, encrypted it, and stored it in the same folder as her timeline. Then she shut her laptop and sat in silence. Because now, it was real. There were others. Not rumors, not whispers. Voices. Hidden. Waiting. Watching. And maybe ready. That night, Ava met NS in the back corner of a cafe in Harlem, by mutual agreement. Public, but quiet. The kind of place where jazz filled the silence between sentences. The woman was already there. Late 30s, soft eyes, scars behind them. She said, "Call me Naomi. I'm Ava." No handshakes, just nods. A different kind of professional etiquette, forged in survival. Ava said, "You knew about him." Naomi stirred her tea without looking up. Everybody knew. The ones who didn't, learned. Ava said, "And HR?" Naomi said, "Complicit, not stupid, just bought." Ava leaned in. "Why now?" Naomi exhaled. "Because I thought it was over. I signed the NDA, took the payout, left the city, started again. But then I saw you, not backing down." Her voice cracked, barely. "It reminded me what I should have done."
Ava sat still. This woman, this stranger, carried pieces of the same fight. She asked, "How bad was it?" Naomi looked up. "Worse than you think. And if they're circling you now, it means you're close. Closer than anyone's gotten." Ava felt her stomach tighten. "Then help me." Naomi hesitated. The fear was still there. "If I break the NDA, they'll bury me." Ava said softly, "If you don't, they'll keep doing this." Silence again. But this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt like decision. Naomi finally nodded. "I have copies, emails, call logs. I kept them for years. I don't know why. Maybe for this." Ava reached across the table, not to touch, but to acknowledge. "You do this. We don't go back." Naomi met her eyes. "That's the point, right? We don't want to." They parted without fanfare. No hugs, no promises. Just a quiet understanding between women who'd both stood behind desks and pretended to feel safe. And as Ava walked back toward the train, phone buzzing in her pocket, she knew. The voice in the dark wasn't just Naomi's. It was hers. Getting louder, and soon it would be impossible to ignore.
Naomi met Ava again 3 nights later, this time in a parking garage, 3rd level down. A manila envelope passed from glove box to backpack without a word. "What's inside?" Ava asked, already knowing it wasn't just paper. "Everything I kept, and everything they paid me to forget." Then she drove off. Back in her apartment, Ava sat cross-legged on her floor under a single reading lamp. She opened the envelope. It wasn't thick, barely 10 pages, but the weight of it pressed on her like a closing fist. 2 printed emails, 1 partial call transcript, a scanned NDA with Naomi's signature, and most damning of all, a redacted HR complaint form time-stamped from 4 years ago. The complaint included key words that made Ava sick: inappropriate proximity, comments on appearance, elevator incident, unwanted contact. The lines under outcome were crossed out in black, but not completely. Ava held the page to the light and tilted it. The faintest words bled through the black bar. Settled internally, no disciplinary action taken. They knew. They always knew. She sat in stunned silence. Her laptop screen glowed softly beside her, the cursor blinking inside a draft email. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. The name in the "to" field, Monica Reyes, investigative reporter, The Ledger. She'd been drafting the message for days, hesitating. But now the hesitation felt like cowardice dressed in caution. She hit send. The response came less than an hour later. "I've been chasing ghosts inside Lexwell for 3 years, and I think you just handed me the flashlight. Let's talk. Confidentially, if you prefer. M." Ava closed her laptop and let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. This was no longer a whisper war. It was a countdown. 2 days later, Monica met her in a small office space near the East River. No press badges, no cameras. Just 2 women and the truth between them. They've threatened others, silenced interns, PR assistants, even a VP once, but nobody ever stood their ground this long, not publicly. Because they made sure none of us could prove it. Ava handed her the envelope. Monica read in silence. "This," she finally said, "this could burn down a boardroom." Then let's light the match. Back at Lexwell, the air grew tight again. People avoided her desk like it was radioactive. Lauren from HR walked by twice, but never made eye contact. Marcus finally spoke. "Whatever you're doing, Ava, don't stop." "Why?" "Because the walls are starting to crack." Ava looked around. The same glass panels, the same cold marble. But it was true. The tension had shifted. People weren't just watching her. They were waiting. And this time, they weren't waiting for her to disappear. They were waiting to see if she'd finish what she started.
The article wasn't supposed to go live until Monday. Ava and Monica had agreed. Finalize sources, double-check legal exposure, wait until they had a response from Lexwell for balance. But someone had other plans. It happened at 2:03 a.m. on a Sunday. A burner Twitter account, no bio, no followers, posted a single PDF link. You don't pay people to stay quiet unless there's something to hide. Hashtag Lexwell cover-up. Hashtag the receptionist. Attached, a redacted version of Naomi's complaint, the NDA, and Ava's name, front and center. Within an hour, it had 30,000 retweets. By sunrise, it was everywhere. BuzzFeed, Vox, The Times. Someone had leaked the core of the story, and someone wanted Ava exposed. At 6:11 a.m., her phone buzzed uncontrollably. Voicemails, emails, mentions, messages from numbers she didn't recognize. Monica called at 6:12. "It wasn't me. I know. But now it's out there, all of it. They know where I live, Monica. You need to leave. I'm not running." Ava hung up and walked to her window. Outside, the street still looked normal. Inside, her inbox was catching fire. One message stood out. From press@lexwellholdings.com. Subject: Urgent. Statement on unauthorized release of confidential documents. Lexwell Holdings is aware of a malicious and unauthorized release of confidential documents currently circulating online. We take all allegations seriously and are conducting an internal review. We urge the public to not draw conclusions based on incomplete or unverified material. Malicious. Unauthorized. They weren't denying anything. They were just trying to invalidate the source. And that source was her. By 8 a.m., news vans were outside the Lexwell building. They weren't just filming the skyline anymore. They were pointing their cameras at the front desk, at her desk. Security offered to walk her in through the basement. She refused. She wore her gray coat, no makeup, natural curls. A statement in itself. She walked through the front doors, and the lobby froze. Executives stared. Assistants whispered. Cameras clicked. Ava didn't flinch. She stepped behind the reception desk, turned on her computer, and answered the first call of the day. "Lexwell Holdings, this is Ava speaking. How may I direct your call?" By noon, they called her upstairs. Not HR. The boardroom. 12 men and women, polished, pale, pristine. At the head of the table, Richard Vale. He was back. She wasn't surprised. "Miss Jordan," he said, voice calm, "we understand you're at the center of a media situation." Truth usually causes those. A chuckle around the table, nervous. "We're prepared to offer you a settlement, again, with stronger protections, a larger figure." Ava looked at the offer. 7 figures. NDA clause. Silence baked into every page. "You want me quiet. But it's too late." She stood. "You didn't bury this. You lit the fuse." Richard leaned back. "You're making a mistake." Ava stepped to the door. "Then I guess I finally belong in this company, because everyone here made one the day they protected you." Outside the boardroom, Monica waited. It's time. The official story would publish in 20 minutes. Full name, full timeline, backed by sources, protected by lawyers. But it wasn't about her anymore. It was about them. The system that thought silence could be bought. You sure?
Ava nodded. Let it burn.
The story dropped at exactly 10 a.m. By 10:05, Ava Jordan's life was no longer her own. Headline: The Ledger. The receptionist who said no. Whistleblower Ava Jordan exposes sexual harassment and corporate silence at Lexwell Holdings. Subheading: Inside the billion-dollar firm where silence is paid and women are pushed out. Ava's photo led the homepage. Her smile, composed, defiant, framed in the soft gray of the Lexwell lobby. But she wasn't smiling anymore. Because while the story told the truth, the world had its own ideas about what that truth meant. By noon, her inbox had over 900 unread messages. Some said thank you, others said liar, some just said whore. One simply said, "You're ruining lives." At 12:30 p.m., her landlord called. There had been people at the building, reporters, protesters. He asked her to consider moving out until things die down. At 1 p.m., Lexwell issued another statement. We are saddened that internal concerns have been taken to the press rather than through appropriate channels. We remain committed to fairness and integrity. They didn't mention Richard Vail. They didn't mention the NDA. They didn't mention Naomi. They mentioned her. And that was the point. Frame the fire as hers. Make her the flame. Then call the smoke a scandal. By 3 p.m., Ava was trending on Twitter. Hashtag the receptionist. Hashtag Lexwell exposed. Hashtag Ava Jordan. Hashtag power versus truth. Hashtag believe black women. Hashtag corporate cover-up. And along with the hashtags came edits. Ava's face on protest signs. Ava's face with angel wings. Ava's face with devil horns. She was a hero, a threat, a pawn, a weapon. And none of it felt real. She closed her laptop and sat in the dark. Not in fear, not in doubt, just unbelief. That the story she had fought to tell had somehow become a battlefield of narratives she couldn't control. Then her phone buzzed. Unknown caller. She almost let it ring, but something told her to answer. Ms. Jordan? The voice was male, calm, unfamiliar. Who is this? You don't know me, but I know Lexwell. I know what they've done. To you. To others. And I have something they've kept off the books. What kind of something? It's a video. One they deleted, or thought they did. A pause. Meet me tonight, discreetly, or this dies in the dark. Ava stood. She felt the fire again, not from outside, from inside. This wasn't over. This wasn't even the climax. It was the frame they'd tried to put her in, cracking. And this time, she was holding the match.
The man gave no name, just coordinates. 7:15 p.m., East Side, Storage Facility, Level B2, Unit 143. Cash only, no phones, come alone. It sounded like a bad movie, but Ava knew truth never shows up polished. It shows up in basements, after dark, from voices no one believes until they whisper loud enough. She arrived wearing a hoodie and sunglasses, alone except for the USB drive zipped into her coat. The hallway was long, fluorescent lights flickered overhead, and at the end of the row, Unit 143 stood open. He was already inside. Mid-40s, bearded, nervous hands. Former Lexwell, you could tell. There was a faded employee badge half shoved into a bag on the floor. He asked, "You brought a laptop?" Encrypted, 2 layers. He nodded, pulled out a rusted external hard drive, and connected it to her machine. I was on their IT team. Contract, not internal. They thought I didn't matter. But I saw what the board requested me to delete. And you didn't? He looked at her. No one deletes anything. They just bury it. The files opened. Folders nested in folders, labeled innocuously. Q4_miscellaneous. Visual archives unsorted. Lobby cam A, old. And then /security, /conflicts, /legal, /flagged. This is what they pulled after Naomi's complaint, he said. Inside, dozens of surveillance videos. Most were grainy, but one had been saved at higher resolution. He clicked. Timestamp, May 9th, 9:24 a.m. Location, elevator lobby, 14th floor. Subject, Vale R/Lawson Naomi. The video played. There was no sound. There didn't need to be. Ava watched Naomi exit the elevator, clipboard in hand. Vale followed. She stepped aside. He cornered. She backed up. He reached for her wrist. She pulled away. He grabbed her again, this time by the waist. She tried to push. He leaned closer. Her mouth opened, clearly shouting something. Then another man walked past. Vale snapped back, like nothing happened. Naomi stood frozen, and the camera kept rolling. Silent, still, undeniable. Ava exhaled, slow and sharp. Why keep this? The man replied, Insurance, for myself, until I saw your face on the news. He handed her a duplicate drive. That's yours. Use it however you want. Just don't let them tell this story without you. The next morning, Ava sent the file to Monica with one line. This is what they paid to disappear. Monica's reply came in 2 minutes. This changes everything. That day, the media stopped calling it a scandal. They called it evidence. Lexwell issued a second statement. We are shocked and disturbed by newly surfaced footage. The board is cooperating fully with an independent investigation. Effective immediately, Richard Vale has been placed on leave pending review. They still didn't say the word. Assault. But Ava didn't need them to. The video said it louder than any press release could. And for the first time in weeks, she felt the ground shift in her direction.
It started with a single woman, a former Lexwell junior analyst, posted a 3-paragraph statement on Instagram. I never told anyone. I thought I imagined it. Now I know I didn't. Thank you, Ava Jordan. Her post got 60,000 likes in 6 hours. By the end of the day, 5 more women came forward. 1 on Facebook, 1 on TikTok, 3 through anonymous op-eds. Their stories weren't identical, but the pattern was. Power, silence, shame. And suddenly Ava wasn't just a whistleblower. She was a spark, and the fire was catching. Lexwell tried to contain it again. They hired a new PR firm, spoke of company culture and unfortunate oversight. They said they would form a diversity and conduct council, as if a committee could erase what had been done. But no one was listening anymore. The voices were too loud. In this time, they had names. Ava sat in Monica's office as emails flooded in. They're scared, Monica said, scanning her phone. Every hour new calls, reporters, lawyers, women asking how to join the investigation. And Lexwell? They've issued you a cease and desist. For what? Defamation, breach of employee contract, NDA violations. Ava raised an eyebrow. So now they're threatening to sue me for telling the truth? Not sue, Monica corrected. Scare. It's the last card they have. Ava exhaled. Let them play it. Monica slid over a folder. Inside was a letter, not from Lexwell, but from the district attorney's office. An official investigation. Criminal. The video made it impossible to ignore. And your testimony, it's next. For a long moment, Ava didn't speak. She thought about the lobby where she once sat invisible. About Naomi's silence. About the emails, the messages, the fear. And now, a courtroom, a record, a reckoning. I'll testify, Ava said quietly. Under oath, on camera. I want it on the record this time. That night, her phone buzzed with a new message. Blocked ID. You should have taken the money. Ava stared at it, then deleted it. She wasn't afraid of threats anymore. She had survived worse. And now, she had an army. Across the city, women were gathering. Online, in person, in boardrooms and bedrooms. Telling the stories they'd folded into themselves for years. It wasn't just about Lexwell anymore. It was about every place like it. And Ava? She wasn't leading a movement. She was the movement.
It had been 6 months since the video, since the protests, since the subpoenas, since Richard Vale's mugshot was leaked to the press in a single damning frame. White cuffs, downcast eyes, no smirk. The media called it the fall of Lexwell. But Ava knew the truth. Lexwell hadn't fallen. It had shed. It had trimmed the rot, changed the drapes, issued statements about growth. And now they were ready for Act 2. They asked her back. Not as receptionist, not even as whistleblower. They asked her back as Director of Culture and Ethics, a 6-figure title with a public-facing mandate, a spotlight, a message to the world. We listen. We've changed. Look, we even gave her an office. Ava sat in that office now. 3rd floor, glass walls, polished nameplate. Ava Jordan, Director, Culture and Ethics. They offered her a bigger one. Corner suite, executive level, the name on the main door. She said no. Because she didn't want their corner. She wanted her own building. So she resigned. Publicly. Posted a letter to LinkedIn and sent a short version to every media outlet that had once misquoted her. Healing doesn't happen under the same ceilings that harmed you. I was never interested in being their symbol. I'm building something better. Within a week, she launched her own initiative, Jordan & Co., a watchdog organization for workplace misconduct starting with finance and law. The first office was in a shared co-working space, small, unglamorous, buzzing with purpose. Naomi joined as head of archives. Monica became a founding board member. Ava took no salary for the first year, because some names don't need a desk plate to matter. On opening day, a reporter asked her, "Do you feel vindicated?" Ava paused, then smiled. "No, I feel useful. That's better." She turned to unlock the door. Plain glass, matte black handle, no security guard, no marble lobby. Just a decal in clean font across the middle. Jordan & Co. We believe you. She stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind her. And this time, the name on the door was hers.